Okay, it's 6:30. I need to bring this meeting to order. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Coghlan and McConkey. That the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of December 20th, 2017 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. I'd ask everyone to stand if you're able for the national anthem and then remain standing. And it'll be led by Councillor Austin.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Please remain standing for a moment for private reflection or private prayer. Please be seated. So I turn to council. Does anyone have a pecuniary interest in any of the matters on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, if something does pop up, just mention it at that time and we'll make a note of it. And we don't have any deputations. We have some previous minutes to get it on the table. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Austin and Coghlan. That the minutes of the council items 6.2 through to 6.4 be approved as presented. Any comments on any of these minutes? Anybody wants to pull them forward? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And now we turn to question period. And if anyone has a question regarding anything on the agenda or even something else, we'll try and answer it for you. Name, obviously name and address for the clerk, please.
Thank you. Donna Kenwell, 1407 Floss Road, 8 West, Elmville. And I'm not here asking for money. Last night at the library board, we passed a resolution dealing with our concerns about the demise of the Barrie Examiner and all the other daily newspapers in Simcoe County. But more importantly, the removal of access to their online website and archives. So the resolution we pass is, the post-media Torstar newspaper swap and related demise of a significant portion of the province's newspapers has resulted in a huge loss for local history and public accountability. The removal from the internet of the paper's online archive. In Simcoe County, this accounts for all the remaining daily newspapers and several of the community newspapers, making up a large portion of the recent historical record. Be it resolved that the Springwater Township Public Library Board call on Torstar Corporation to urgently discuss with representatives of the public library systems and other interested parties ways of immediately restoring unrestricted public access to this important resource. So this resolution is going via our CEO to all the Simcoe County CEOs of the libraries. We're sending it as well to the Southern Ontario Library Service and to the Minister of Culture. And we're hoping that you would entertain a similar motion and we thought the most expeditious way was for me to come tonight and present you with this and ask if it could be a notice of motion, and hope for your support in that. And also to let you know that Barrie Council passed a resolution on this issue a week ago Monday, and we're hoping that you could also carry it forward to the county level.
Okay, I'm just going to turn to the clerk for a moment. Would be an expeditious way, could we do it without going through a formal notice of motion? Could we table a motion supporting the library's motion this evening? Madam Clerk?
Because this comes through question period, we have to go through the notice of motion process.
Okay.
Great.
Thank-
I have it
Okay.
written out if you would like a copy.
Yes, please.
It's easier to reinvent the wheel.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Kenwell? That's it? Merry Christmas. Councillor Austin.
Mayor French, thank you. To the rest of council, through you, Mayor French, I attended my first library board meeting last night, and I indicated to the rest of the board members that I was prepared to put this forward as a notice of motion at the end of tonight's meeting.
Good, okay, so that'll come up at the appropriate time, so you know it will be tabled as a notice of motion. So you know, and I think you're aware of it, our first meeting is not until January 17th, I think it is, and so that's when it'll be tabled. And quite honestly, if the mover wants to expand on that at that time, that's appropriate. Councillor Austin.
Through you, Mayor French, to Ms. Kendall, would it be possible for you to forward to council the wording of the motion that was made at Barrie City Council, if you have that information? I'm just curious about their wording.
I don't have it, I just saw it as a news report,
Okay.
but I can try and track it down.
Please. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Austin, the clerk has turned to me and said she can dig that out. Okay, anyway, thank you for that delegation. Anybody else from the public have any questions? Okay, seeing none, we shall move on with correspondence. Can I have a mover and a seconder? McConkey, Hannah? That correspondence and information items 8.2 through to 8.5 be received as information. Would we like to pull and discuss any of these? Councillor McConkey?
8.3.
Is it a question or, okay, please?
I'm trying to call it up now. I'm having difficulty, but basically, last night when I was looking at it, there's links in there to meetings that we can attend, the province having, and I couldn't get the list of meetings, so I'd like to attend one. Did anyone get to see them? I was wanting to see where they were, because lots of times we have to provide comment because there could be none in the north. So I'd like to really see where the meetings are, so if that can be forwarded to us, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, shall do that. Any other, Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mayor French. To you, to Councillor McConkey. I also tried to find it, and I was of the understanding that the meeting locations and dates have not yet been set. I understand it says you will find information about your upcoming public open houses, but I got the impression perhaps Director Spagnell might know.
Yeah, Director Spangler, do you have any comment on this yet? Because I know this just came out.
Through you, Mayor French, to Councillor Austin, no, at this point I do not. Staff will be compiling comments on the process and everything that goes along with this correspondence at a later date.
Any other items that you want to discuss? Okay, yeah. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Okay, the item we have here is 9.1, and it's regarding the mixed and Hickling subdivisions in Midhurst. And to get it on the floor, can I have a mover and a seconder? Hannah? Alan? I'll just read what we're going to be discussing. That the report from the Director of Planning Services regarding Mix and D Hickling subdivision red line revisions dated December 20th, 2017 be received. The Council does not object to the proposed red line revisions to the draft plans of subdivision and associated conditions of draft plan approval, and that the Ontario Municipal Board and the County of Simcoe be so notified. Any questions on this that we to planning? Councillor Anna.
Thank you, Mayor. Some of the objections in the past to the Midhurst secondary plan has been that the lot sizes weren't consistent with the existing type of homes that were in Springwater, if you like, or in particularly Midhurst, Snow Valley, and so on. So by creating larger lots and so on, I think that's a positive. But my question is, we're reducing the number of units by 165. So my first question, I guess, through the planning would be, what happens with those surplus units? Can that concern that I have is, can those units be used someplace outside of that settlement area?
Director Spagno.
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councillor Hannah. The first thing to note is that this is a red line revision, and there hasn't been any application or any process brought forward to transfer or allocate any of the available population that might be freed up through this process anywhere else. So it's tough for staff to comment on whether or not it could be. Based on my understanding of the policies, there would need to be some sort of a separate process that would involve township involvement, county involvement, to determine whether or not that would be appropriate course of action. So at this point, I'm unaware of any application to do so, and even the process to do that is unclear as to whether or not that could even occur. But at any rate, it would require some sort of county approval or township approval or consideration.
Follow up.
I have a couple more questions. So my next question to that would be, should council be asking or seeking some kind of legal advice to make sure that we're clear on that? Because that is an important issue if those numbers are going to be taken and putting someplace outside of that settlement area, and if we're not sure that can or cannot be done. So my next observation would be that we talk about the number of people we have to have per hectare. So by increasing the size of the lot, that basically reduces the number of home units, if you like, inside that, on that lot, if you like. So how do we increase or maintain our requirement for the number of people per hectare if we're going to have less or fewer homes within that hectare?
Director Spagno.
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councillor Hannah. The first point about the legal advice, it's definitely within Council's discretion to determine whether or not a legal opinion is required to take a look at potential reallocation or swapping of allocation to other areas within the municipality. However, the only concern I have with that is that we don't have a process to review and to provide any real substantive consideration for legal, because through this application we are dealing with the red line revision only. To Councillor Hannah's question regarding where we make up the loss in density, there are other opportunities throughout the settlement area via mixed uses where there might be opportunities to increase densities in those areas. However, the key point here is that even after the reduction in the 165 residential units, the densities prescribed within the secondary plan are still being met for neighborhood 1 at 50 persons and jobs per hectare. And across the board, all three neighborhoods is still being maintained at 46 persons and jobs per hectare. So the densities are still being adhered to with the reduction. It's one of those instances where if there was a considerable or significant reduction that had an impact on densities, then staff would be commenting in that fashion with respect to the densities and the ability of the plan to conform to the secondary plan. So staff's recommendation is based on what has been presented, in that the density requirements of the plan are being met. Otherwise, staff would be potentially speaking differently about the requests if they weren't.
Thank you. I'm not questioning staff, and you know I'm not, but it's just a concern I have, and if we're going to approve something, I think we need to have all the information. So that was why I was asking those questions, and that's why I think we need to be careful what we do. If we're going to be increasing the need to make greater density in other areas, that creates a possibility or a caution that maybe those areas will be forced to have multi-unit residence versus single-family dwellings. So just something that I think we need to be cautious of. The other issue I have with this is that, or concern I think as council we should have, reducing the number of homes by 165, that reduces the number, or the amount of development charges we can collect. Our budget that we're going to talk about tonight, a lot of the expenditures in that budget are based on development charges, so this is 165 less units that you're going to get development charges for. Those are just my observations. I wanted to make sure council was all aware.
Thank you for those observations. And I think picking up one point that Director Spagno mentioned, the reality is anybody can apply for anything, unfortunately. And then it's up to us to get a legal perspective or a planning perspective. You know, obviously this red line version is going more in keeping with what we have experienced in the township. You know, I will support in this particular case the recommendation of the planning department. Any other questions on this development? Councillor McConkey?
Well, again, the residents in my ward would be happy to see the numbers being reduced, but what I've heard from the residents is by reducing these numbers, do they forfeit the numbers then that are over? So that question's not being answered tonight, is what I understand. I don't know if the additional numbers are being forfeited or, you know, so, and I also question, I want to know, with a red line revision, like I've seen them before, I did see it quite early in the Hillsdale situation, but in the other developments I've seen, they're usually further down the way. And when I look at the conditions of approval, I just want to make sure, so there's two questions, is one, does the numbers, you know, you say you don't need them, so you don't need them. Is that the answer then? You don't need the number, any more additional numbers. So I need to know is the answer to that. And my second question would be, is in the conditions, I think that we have to be careful as a council because it says, prior to any further approvals of the subject development, and updated development charges bylaw must be in full force to ensure that the services. Now, I know that a development charges, we're working on it, and we will recoup the cost if there's less development. We just charge more development charges. But what does that statement mean prior to any further developments? Because further down in the conditions, it says the subdivision agreement it said prior to final approval. So when it says prior to any further approvals, to me that's opening it up. Are we allowed to make an approval prior, based on these conditions? And it's number 7 if someone wants to look at it, and I can ask Brent that.
And I will direct that question to Director Spagno.
Thank you, Mayor Franchita, Councillor McConkey. I guess the staff really can't answer the question about whether or not the numbers are forfeited or not, because really that is at the discretion of whether or not the developers or the applicants are going to come in with an application to try to transfer those numbers somewhere else. So really, to the mayor's point, to be able to try to guess what the application or what the process is going to be and whether or not those numbers are forfeited, I can't necessarily comment on that particular question. The question about condition 7, when taking a look at the condition, when it refers to further approvals, to my mind, that is approvals to final approval for subdivision development, breaking ground, things of that nature. And when you take a look at condition 7, it specifically references that a development charge background study has to be completed and that the long-range financial plan has to be considered through that process. So when additional approvals, and what we're dealing with here is a red line revision to align streets and showing a reduction in lot, what'll happen through the process is the background study will be adjusted to reflect the reduction in lots, and therefore there wouldn't be a shortage in development charge dollars because the actual development charge amount would be adjusted to reflect the new unit yield. So to my mind, what that's speaking to is final approval, breaking ground, registration of subdivisions, in order to ensure that the development charge background study reflects what is actually being approved at the end of the process.
Before I go to Councilor McConkey, and I want to know if this is even permitted, because there's a concern about this extra, where would these 135 units or whatever go? I do recall we did something in Stone Manor Wood, putting a ceiling, so they can't come back and rejigger it again. Is there any reason we cannot amend, possibly an amending motion that basically something to the comment that those 135 or whatever will not be allotted anywhere else? I think it was done by a separate agreement letter, but would that be appropriate? Because maybe one of the councillors would like to kind of amend this, and to give them some comfort level that basically these aren't going to show up somewhere else. Is that appropriate? Director Spagnol.
Thank you, Mayor French. The only thing that I would consider through this is because we're dealing with what eventually would be an Ontario Municipal Board approval, once or if council does not object to the red line revision, I think that there would need to be some feedback as to whether or not there would be any issue with such a ceiling, because there may be the potential for a dispute at the OMB with respect to such a request. So without actually discussing this with the applicant, it's one of those things where I think it might be more appropriate to maybe provide the time to discuss that potential option to see if the applicant is amenable to such a condition. Because ultimately, it will need to go to the board, and if there is an issue, it will have to get resolved at the OMB because the Ontario Municipal Board is the approval authority in this case.
So not wanting to go to the OMB, because we know that's an expensive dance, would it be appropriate to kind of defer this and have you come back with a revised report on the appropriateness of adding that condition? And you could have discussion with the developer in the interim. Mayor
French, I think in this case here, if that's something that council wants to see added to the recommendation, I think it'd most likely be prudent to actually have that discussion with the developers, to the applicant to talk about that.
Yeah, and maybe there could be some clarification. Councillor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor French. Just procedurally, that would then need to be an amendment to this motion, unless it's either a deferral or an amendment to the motion to include that, if that's direction to staff. So we would have to vote on that amendment as a council before we vote on the existing motion.
I'll turn to the clerk, but we defer and add clarification to motions in the past, so because we want a little more information, but I'll turn to the clerk for guidance on it.
Council does have the option to defer or refer. If you want to make a change to this, that would mean that the motion would be voted on with whatever changes. So it could potentially be approved with a condition, or council can refer or defer for staff to provide further information.
So would the appropriate be referred to staff, and because we're adding some information on it? C.O. Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From my review of the situation, I would, advise a referral, just a referral, straight referral. There are, the minutes of this meeting are being recorded, so we can take that discussion back and answer those questions. I would hesitant to make specific recommendations until we have more information, because I don't want to take council down a path that we can't change. So council is aware of, council has told us what their concerns are, staff is aware, and so if you refer it back, we will endeavor to find some more answers for council.
So simple referral. And is the mover and seconder agree to that, Councillor Hannah?
And further to the referral, and I agree with that, but I also think there was some merit in your comments about a cap, but I'm concerned that if we put a cap on, then we're restricting other options. Maybe, I'm just suggesting that maybe the developer and our planning department come forward with something that's a positive thing for our township, and they may want to put those numbers in some other location that would be beneficial to the residents and the developers and planning and development charges. So I just want to be careful how we're providing that direction, that we're not creating a box that we can't get outside of, and that we're going to end up with the OMB and lose that anyway.
No, and maybe to clarify my comments, I think we should just refer to staff. You know, there's some uncomfortableness of, that they could go anywhere, so they can come back and just elaborate a little more and on some of the points that they made on the report. So I'm not suggesting, well, as a matter of fact, we're not making a recommendation. They're going to respond with comments in a report based on our conversation. So no, all we would do is take this motion and refer it to staff. Are the mover and seconder in agreement with that? Yeah, okay. Further comment? Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor
Councillor
French. And through you to Director Spagno, the last reduction that we had in Hillsdale, the additional population that was allocated to that area, and council voted to support the reduction and lot sizes. What happened to that number of population, and where is that?
Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor French. To Councillor Coghlan. There was no application or any request made to transfer those allocated units elsewhere. Now, the one key difference between that process and this one here is that process had a related application where there was a consideration of designating lands to the north and a plan of subdivision. So the idea under the Schedule 7 numbers that were provided by the province through the growth plan were looked at, and the argument that was brought forward by the applicant was that because it's a reduction, that those numbers are actually within the Schedule 7 population allocations, but they were spread over to the lands to the north. And that was the general basis for the argument that came forward as part of those applications. But the balance of the population, there has been no request or any applications to have that dispersed anywhere else or utilized anywhere else.
Councillor McConkey?
Last comment. I just wanted to be sure, like, I am happy of the reduction. Like, there's nothing wrong with the reduction and what they're trying to do here. It's just because we know population is a sort of a trigger point within the community, we just needed more information in regards to that type of process. And, otherwise, just more reference on if that would be a future. I think we just need it written clearly as to how it's going to be dealt with. But it's not that I don't support this, and it's not a huge number that, it's going to make a huge difference in the community. But sometimes you like to be the driver of the planning.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. And final comment, I think this is something that I support. We've had residents here for the last 3 years asking us to change what's happening, and this is a change, and you're right, it is a small change, but it is a change in favor of what the residents are asking for. I think that this council has supported red line revisions with allocation left unknown numerous times. We don't know where that population is going to go. We could go back to the development community and they could say, we don't know what we're going to do with it yet. And they could also say to us, we're going to do X, and with no plan of subdivision, that can change. So there's not going to be a detailed or concrete answer come forward with a referral, in my opinion. I would like to see this move forward. I think this is what the residents do want, and it's something that I fully support.
Thank you. Any other final comments? Councillor Austin?
Through you, Mayor French, to Director Spagno, just a clarification, please. As I was listening, I think Councillor Hannah implied that with the lot reductions, or the number of lot reductions, that DCs would be reduced. And I think Councillor McConkey was saying no, that that would mean that with the reduced number of lots, each lot would have to pay a higher DC charge. So, so we'd still end up with the same actual amount of money. Can you explain to me which of the two is correct?
Director Spagnell or Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councilor Austin, I'll attempt to answer the question, and if Director Schmidt has anything to offer after I've answered it, then I think he'll do so. The answer to that is that we're actually going through a development charge background study update, which is going to take a look at the number of units and the appropriate development charge fee to be assigned to each individual residential unit. So that background study will be revised to reflect any change in unit count. So what that means is there might be less units, but the development charge will be reflective of the actual units that are going to be developed. So there may be less lots for consideration, but the development charge will be adjusted to reflect the amount of units that will be approved.
Follow up?
So that whatever the number of units, and there has to be enough coming from the development charges to pay for the infrastructure that will be needed? Okay, thank you. All right, so that would be different from what you were
Okay,
implying.
well, let's not have that debate. Okay, even though I'm the one that brought up the referral, and we'll vote on, we need a mover and a seconder. I will support the referral. And I'll just mention that for what it's worth. So I need a mover and a seconder for the referral. For the referral, to refer it. I need a mover and a seconder. Okay? Hannah McConkey. So we know what we're doing. We're referring it based on the information provided. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Coghlan, you look
I'm sorry,
perplexed.
Mayor Friends, I thought you just voted against the referral? That you brought forward the referral?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I didn't bring anything forward. I
Okay.
brought a suggestion.
Okay,
Because
thank
it
you.
is my job to lead council and provide options to it, and that is an option, and that is my job, and I don't have to support it, though. Councillor Coghlan.
So, sorry, just for clarification, you led council to the referral and then voted against the referral?
I provided as an option, let's be
Okay,
clear.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, and for our large audience, you can stick around tonight, because we do have some treats in that you can partake in. Okay. Moving on, next item is, where am I? Okay, the 9.2, action report, appointment of emergency management program. Oh, sorry. How come it doesn't say- Okay, my agenda's wrong. So we, what's new? Okay, but we have that, seasonally kind of dressed gentleman who's going to come forward, but I need a mover and a seconder because we're basically kind of regarding the budget, adopting the budget and approving the budget. Alan, seconder, Coghlan. And I'll read it, and while our Director of Finance comes forward. That the report from the Director of Finance regarding the revised draft 2018 budget dated December 20, 2017 be received, that the revised draft 2018 tax-based operating budget as presented December 20th, 2017 be approved, and that the draft 2018 water operating budget as presented November 15, 2017 be approved, and that the draft 2018 wastewater operating budget as presented November 15, 2017 be approved, and that the revised draft 2018 capital budget as presented December 20th, 2017 be approved, and that the policing charge increase to $228 per property for all properties except for farmland, and the managed forest properties, which would be charged $114 per property, and that the 2018 tax rate bylaw be presented including the county and education requisitions, as soon as the tax ratios have been approved by the county of Simcoe. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My apologies for my attire this evening. Hopefully you do not, your decision does not reflect my informal wear. With that said, this evening I am here to present the township's final budget for 2018 and to provide you some highlights of that 2018 budget, as well as to seek council's approval of same. So with that said, the 2018 budget at a glance, so if we look to the left side of this slide here, we have gross expenditures of roughly 18.6 million. We have gross revenues of roughly 18.2, hence leading to a net levy requirement of roughly $324,000, which equates to, on the township side, a 2.99% tax levy increase. The policing charge, as council is aware, that was adjusted up to $228 per property. On the right-hand side of the slide, we have the capital budget with the revisions that were made. We're at $15.2 million. And with that said, one of the funding sources for the 15.2 is coming out of taxation at roughly $886,000. So when we take everything into consideration, including the county's approved budget at 1.04%, we assume the education rate is revenue neutral at this stage, as well as with the increase in the policing charge, we look at a blended tax rate increase of 1.86% for an average home assessed at $422,584. So the next couple of slides here, I wanted to kind of just walk council through and the public through where we were and where we are. So you may recall back on November 15th, the original 2018 budget was tabled in front of council. We came in with essentially a $337,000 request, or 3.1%, and this slide here provides a breakdown of what that $337,000 or 3.1% increase was comprised of. So I wasn't going to go through each one of those. I think we've talked about those a number of times to date, unless there was any questions. So the next slide here, again, if we take into account the 337 that we started with on November 15th, there was some amendments on 27th and 29th of November, one being the increase in the Ontario Municipal Partnership funding, which equated to $181,000, or a 1.67% reduction. There was also a consideration by council to not approve the SSEA, the Severn Sound Environmental Association's program change. That was not originally included in the 337, and hence why it's not showing on this page here. So at the end of November 29th meeting, we had a $155,000 net levy requirement of 1.43%. Moving on to our next meeting, which was on December 4th, council agreed to the library program change to extend hours, which led to an increase or an investment of $46,000 or 0.43%. There was also the removal of the Celebrate Springwater event in the amount of just under $40,000, and also a reduction in deposit on the rental sweeper of an amount of $20,000, hence leading to the net tax levy requirement of $142,000 or 1.31%. Council also met on December 6th to review the 2018 budget. At that meeting, there was an amendment or a motion to move the splash pad project 2023-12 from the year 2023 to 2018 because there's no tax impact. Essentially, you're not seeing any dollars here, as well as the increase in the policing charge. Again, went from 216 to 228 for residential properties. Again, net tax levy requirement of 142. Then on December 8th, a number of other amendments were made by council. Essentially, we combined the Ball Diamond project here at the Tree Nursery Sports Park, as well as the North Exit Road, which led to a savings of $25,000. There was also a motion to add a half-year operating funds for the splash pad. That was for an investment of $15,000. There was a motion to add project 2017-37. This project is fully funded from reserves and hence no impact on tax. There was also a number of motions made regarding the township and/or staff-initiated program changes, which had a net effect of $193,000 or 1.78%. And then council also made a motion to reduce council's special events budget by $1,000. So hence leading to a net tax levy requirement of just under $325,000 or 2.99%. So for an estimated tax impact on an average residential property, for the township's portion, we're looking again 2.99% or $43.22. County of Simcoe 104, 1.04% increase or $12.94. The increase in the policing charge of $12 essentially leads to a $68, just over a $68 increase or a 1.86% blended increase. Again, this is based on an average home assessed at $422,584. This next slide here provides some historical data on tax increases over the last 5 years. I wasn't going to go into it in specifics unless council had any major changes, but it has been updated from the last time that we presented this to council, I believe, while we were going through budget deliberations. So just to try to sum up here on the 2018 water and wastewater operating budgets, the water on the left side, essentially we have gross revenues of $2.8 million and gross expenditures of 1.93. We are looking at transferring roughly $800,000 into the water reserve fund in 2018, and hence one of the reasons why we've requested that council, and council has approved, that the rate for the next 3 years for water remain the same level, at the same level as 2017 rates. On the right-hand side of this slide, we have the wastewater operating budget, gross expenditures of 1.3 million, gross revenues of 1.2, and hence we are actually looking to draw money out of the wastewater reserve fund in 2018, which again has been discussed with council, and hence why we're also looking at an increase on the wastewater side for rates. And with that said, the impact on a typical residential user, again, from a water perspective, there is no increase. However, on the wastewater side, we are looking at roughly a 3.7% increase or $30.20. Again, this is based on an average residential user who consumes approximately 240 cubic meters a year. Overall, if the resident is on both water and wastewater, they would essentially see a 2.2% increase. So with that said, Mr. Mayor and members of council, before you tonight you have a staff report, and for your consideration is that the revised draft 2018 tax-based operating budget be approved, that the 2018 water and wastewater operating budgets be approved, that the 2018 capital budget as revised be approved, and that the policing charge increase to $228 per property and to $114 for farmland and managed forest properties. That concludes my presentation for this evening.
Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor French, and again, congratulations to you and staff on the budget process. I think it was very well handled. Question, with respect to the advancement of the splash pad capital project, or the acceleration to this year, was the servicing cost, and I know it's the DC eligibility with respect to that, but we'll have to be borrowing money, is my understanding, to accomplish that. Was the debt, principal and interest increased to facilitate that, to make that happen in the budget? Was that part of the adjustment that you made as we're seeing these numbers now?
Director Schmidt.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Allen. So you may recall that the discussion around the splash pad, we haven't determined what the final financing is of that project. So right now, it is still proposed to be funded from DCs, and it will ultimately be funded by DCs. But once staff comes back, now that, well, assuming that approval happens tonight, staff will be coming back with a staff report once we go out to tender and provide those results back to council. And at that time, we'll provide financing options to council to determine how we might go ahead and finance this project. Ultimately, will be funded from DCs and Parkland Reserve Fund, though.
Other questions? Councillor Hanna.
Thank you. Thanks again, Jeff. Our total debt with the 4 million, what's it come to? Because we're increasing with this budget, we'll increase our total debt by 4 million. What's the total now of the total debt?
Director Schmidt.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanna. I believe the debt at the end of 2017 is roughly $6 million. I don't have that right in front of me, but I can confirm it for you. So at the end of 2017, I believe it's around $6 million.
And I'm accurate that we're adding $4 million on, and with that total, it comes somewhere between $10 and $12 million. Our annual payment for principal and interest will be approximately $1 million a year, is that correct?
Director Schmidt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanna. Correct. It's, if we add 4 million, we're hoping to not have to add 4 million, and we'll do our best not to do that. But if, under those assumptions, if we were to add 4 million, essentially we'd be at around $10 million, which equates to about $930,000 in annual principal and interest payments.
Other questions? Councillor Austin?
Could I ask for slide 9 to be put up? No. Sorry. The historical one. Not that. Would be. Is it 9? Yeah, slide 9, thank you. Just looking at that, you know, and thinking about the perspective of it, about how the tax increase is higher this year than in recent past. Two things that I want to comment on. Number one is for the last few years, we've been adding 1%, or building in 1% for infrastructure, which to me, you know, is a wise thing to do, preparing for the future and make sure that we're not slipping backwards there. And secondly, when I look at some of the things that we've added, in particular the splash pad and the library edition, those things enhance the social value of our community and make it a more desirable place to live in, which means that it's probably going to attract more people to come and live in our community, which will pay off in the long run. So I look at some of the changes, the investments that we've approved in this budget to be a kind of leveraging effect. In the long run, it's going to pay off by having more people contributing to our tax base in the future. So I think going forward, this is a good move. And one last thing I want to say is I don't think Director Schmidt should have to apologize. I compliment him on his appearance.
Okay, other questions? Councillor McConkey.
I'd just like to say I support the budget, and I did have difficulty with the splash pad going into the north first before the south end with all of the development that is going into my area. But I do support it, but I do wish that this council and staff really consider that the south end be moved up if it's a success in Elmvale. And because as you can see, the development that's coming as we're talking tonight, and we saw Snow Valley come forward and that. So, and I had mentioned the other night that on Seaton Road, there's a park there that's large enough, a community park, and that would be great for the Carson, the subdivision going in at Hickling, and for the Snow Valley. So I would like that to be considered in future. And I hope Elmvale really enjoys their splash pad.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you to Director Schmidt. Again, thank you, and thank you to all of senior management who sat down with us and went through line by line again this year. I'm excited to support this budget. I think it is one of our better budgets. It's more progressive, and I think it still is responsible. I think it's what Springwater wants, and I'm excited to see where this takes us. So thank you for doing this with us.
And I guess my only comment is I support the budget. I would have liked seen it trim a tiny bit, because the reality is last year, that 1.43 actually included 2% for infrastructure. In other words, it was actually a minus. And this year, if we did it apples to apples, this year would be 2.86 compared to 1.43, but it's not, because we're only putting 1% infrastructure investment in. Just to be totally transparent. Is that correct, Director Schmidt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, not quite. Again, a 1% would have an impact on the township side. It wouldn't be a direct 1% on the blended, so it wouldn't be a 1% added to the 1.86, we'd have to follow through on those numbers, but wouldn't be exactly correct.
Yeah, you'd actually have to go up to the spring water line, and it would have been 3.99, whatever that ripples
Correct.
down to. Okay.
Correct.
I'll accept that, since you're the expert. Deputy Mayor Allen?
I'll just make the point that with the 1% we've been doing, 2% last year and the 1% this year, the reserve for infrastructure at the end of 2018 is estimated to be about $788,500.
No, and definitely in the right direction. Any other comments? Councillor Hannah?
I don't have any questions from the Director of Finance, and I agree with everybody. He's done as best he can. We've had opportunities to discuss. I've had my comments. I'm not going to change anybody's mind at this table, I know that, but I do have some comments I want to make before the vote goes forward.
Okay, please make those comments now.
My first observation is, as I mentioned, the debt, increasing the township debt by $4 million. It's not like we're going up 1, 2, or 3. We're going up $4 million if things go forward. My other concerns I had and had the debate during our discussions was the amount of money we're putting into our fire service. We're not only doing replacement of 2 vehicles, these are transport vehicles for personnel. They're pickup trucks, they're not fire trucks, which people at home need to understand, but they needed replacing, so we did that. Adding on an additional pickup truck for staff so they don't have to share the pickup trucks, I have concerns with that, and I don't believe myself I got enough evidence to support that need. The other thing I have concerns with the fire service is full-time fire service, if you like, on holiday weekends. 7 years plus I've been sitting here, never heard from anybody on the fire service that we ever had a problem on a holiday weekend having staff respond to fires. The comment was made by somebody at this table, well, residents can afford it. It's not what residents can afford, it's what we can justify and have a responsibility to have the facts before we go forward, and I don't believe we had the facts. The deputy fire chief mentioned his number of years of service and that there was a need, but during his number of years of service and as deputy fire chief, we never did get a report or business case stating this is what we needed to do. So that's why I had concerns with that. Then with the library, these library folks are here and they know my position on the library. It's not that I don't support the library, my family's used the library. I don't support the need to stay open, the hours they open in the morning and not stay open later at night. Councillor Ritchie, Councillor McConkey, we were all on council when they came forward and said they wanted more money to open early. The argument was put forward, instead of open early, open late at night. We were told there's no need to open late at night. Now we're told they need to open late at night, but still need to open early in the morning because, in my view, 3-year-olds have to come to the library because they need a nap in the afternoon. I'm not comfortable that that's satisfactory for me to make a decision to spend $146,000 or 1.3% tax increase on our taxpayers. 1.3% just for the library. I'm not comfortable with that, and that's why I expressed my concerns on that. The other thing that was stated a couple of times was that this council, during our term, reduced the number of staff by, I think the comment was made by 2. We didn't reduce the number of staff. The library board elected to hire a CAO and pay that CAO an additional increased fund of $24,000 more than the retiring top pay for the CAO of that day. So I just want to make clear, we as council weren't responsible for any reduction in staff. So I don't want to wear that. Anyway, I think as the legacy for this council is that we've done our best, we've had our discussions. I'm still not comfortable because I don't believe we've had enough facts. The splash pad, I expressed my views on the splash pad, that we don't have enough information with regards to the health, the liability, how it's going to be operated. There's going to be community fundraising for it. We don't have that information. I liked Councillor Coughlin's efforts, and I liked what she came forward with, suggesting that it be paid for from the hydro fund and then be paid back as development charges or community fundraising takes place. So that was one, what I thought was a positive thing with the splash pad. I think some people have commented to me that this appears to be an election issue budget, and I hope that's not the case. I hope we are basing our decisions on the facts that I don't believe I have enough to support this budget, so I'm asking right now for a recorded vote.
Thank you. Do you want any comments from anybody on staff, CAO, fire chief? Okay, all right, no, okay. Okay, no, that's good, okay. Since I'll turn it over is there any other questions, first of all? Okay, Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and I guess I'm just really hoping that there's a positive tone left on this budget because it is something that I'm extremely excited about. When we talk about taking on additional debt, and the residents at home are hearing that this council is, doubling essentially or close to doubling the debt that we have, I think to the balance, and in order to be progressive, you do need to do. Sometimes you need to spend money in order to create what we're looking for in Springwater. But I think it's important too that there is a balance. That's what's being proposed right now. If there is other means of finding that, is it 38 million in reserves total in the whole? Like, let's be honest here. I mean, it's not like we're going to just go and take debt on if we don't need to do so. Like we are. This is what our budget is, our game plan, and then we're going to come forward with detailed information, and council's going to have the opportunity to go through various ways of financing each capital or operational expenditure. So I think that as long as the tone is left that, I guess debt is always a scary thing, but progress to me is something that we need to be excited about, and I think that we as a council have done an excellent job in being responsible and yet progressive. So thank you.
Yeah, just one clarification before I go to Councillor McConkey. On the debt, it goes 6 to 10 million. How much is our external debt increasing? Director Schmidt?
Through Mr. Mayor to members of council. So essentially, that's what we're expecting it to external debt to increase to, assuming though that we don't have any other funding sources available to us. So the intent would be, to Councillor Coghlan's comments, is to the extent that we can find alternative funding sources and not have to issue the debt, we will do so. Debt is kind of the last resort, if you will.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it's clarified there's not internal financing and that this is external. Okay. Councillor McConkey.
I'd like to just say something on the debt too, that this council does realize that a lot of the debt, the way we are going to be getting out of the debt is through development charges, and we will have to work closely with our development community and ensuring that stakes go into the ground at certain times, because if we keep at this debt and the development doesn't happen, we will be in trouble.
Any other comments, or shall I turn it over to the clerk?
A recorded vote was requested by Councillor Hanna. When I call your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Austin?
Yes.
Councillor Coghlan?
Yes?
Councillor Hanna?
No.
Councillor McConkey?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Yes.
And Mayor French.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. Congratulations on the budget. And I do want to kind of comment again. I think we've really got it down to a fine art, the way to present it, so we understand every line item that is occurring. And I think that was really, really well done. So thank you and for your team, and I guess our investment in some more manpower in your department was reflected in the way we were able to bring the budget forward this year. So it was a good investment. So thank you, Director Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
And your sweater's not as bad from the back, so you might want to turn around as you're. There you go.
Yes. Okay, now back to the agenda and 9.2. Actually, that's 9.3, just for clarification. And the appointment of Emergency Management Program Chairperson and Committee. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Hanna and Coghlan. I'll read the resolution. The report from the Fire and Emergency Services Department regarding appointment of Emergency Management Program Chairperson and Committee dated December 20, 2017 be received, and that a bylaw appointing members to the Emergency Management Program Committee be submitted to Council for consideration. Discussion, questions? Councilor McConkey.
Is this the same emergency management? Like, we have had this before, and I believe it's the deputy mayor that carries everything in his car in case there's an emergency. At least our old deputy did. So just want to understand, like, if it's a crisis situation, is that what this committee is? Is like when there's, something go wrong with the weather or something, big accident, a train derailment? Is this what this is in support of?
Director Givet.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor McConkey. Just to clarify, first of all members of the EOC, the Emergency Operations Centre, that may play a pivotal role in helping the problem go away, carry a binder, whether they keep it in their office or their car. The committee is separate in as much as it's more of a planning tool. It is required underneath Ontario regulation, but it's more to sort of identify the issues that we may face, build upon strengths and identify weaknesses and overcome them. So it's a planning tool before the emergency, and ultimately throughout the year the committee would meet and review the existing plan so that it could recommend changes to council in accordance with the regulation. That's the purpose of the committee. I guess to comfort council perhaps, this is something that we already do, it's just we could do it a little bit better, and through council support and direction from CAO Brindley, and with the support of all the members of the EOC, I'd just like to point out that the township is otherwise perfectly in compliance. It's done a really, really good job this year, and that's no real credit to me, that's through others. And basically this is just tightening up the one thing that we didn't nail down in order to gain compliance this year. So provided that it passes tonight, we will be compliant and won't have the ministry coming knocking at our door.
Councillor Hanna.
Thank you. Chief, we have a committee now, and who's on it, please?
Director Givet.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Hanna, it's not my understanding that we currently have a committee. We have people that fill the same roles within the Emergency Operations Centre. We just don't have a formal committee.
Thank you, and if I may, because the way I read this, we're looking for a member or members to be on this committee. The way I read it, and I can only go back to my experience in previous careers, that municipalities or large cities, they have emergency planning plans on how they deal with certain emergencies, whether it's a subway or whatever. I would suggest that one of the people on this committee should be our CAO, only because of if there's an emergency, would not necessarily be an emergency involving the fire. It could be something that requires our Works Department, our Recreation. For example, when the DC-8 crashed in Toronto, they used the Woodbridge Arena as the morgue, turned on the ice because it was July, and put all the body parts, unfortunately, on the ice surface, but that's what they needed. So without having a key person like our CAO or the acting CAO be one of the people on that committee, if emergency takes place, we need somebody that can contact our different township departments and activate all these resources. I would suggest that the CAO should be one of the key people on it. I don't know whether you're going to put all these people on it or we're voting for it tonight, because I didn't get that out of the report.
I'll go to CAO Brindley.
Thank you, Mayor French, through to Councillor Hanna. We're not looking for council's approval. This is the committee that sort of has come out of our roles. I've been very active in the last number of years. I hold my CEMC designation. So does our deputy chief, and you've got yours now? Yep. So I've been very active as the head of the EOC. It's a matter of fact, the Emergency Operating Center is the EOC. Matter of fact, I'm there always, but I think it should be our chief who leads it, and I support him, but I am there all the time.
And I think for clarification, the bylaw is actually appointing these members, is my understanding. Is that correct, Chief Givet?
Thank you, Your Worship. You're absolutely correct. So as you can see from the screen in front of you, CAO is actually the alternate chair. And as you can tell from the job titles, to Councillor Hanna's point, all the relevant directors of the township, for whatever, in the case of recreation parks and properties, if we needed to use an arena to house people, or, if there was ice in and you were really stuck, you could use it for the purposes you described. But basically we can use all of the township facilities and have the decision makers there. And through the EOC, we have their deputy directors or supervisors as our alternates for actually managing the emergency itself. So by adopting the bylaw, all department heads would be in effect on this committee. and would be able to give us the best advice.
CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Worship. The one thing I wanted to add is there's no names on this list, and the purpose there is that, let's say I would retire or someone, then you have to change the bylaw every time. So essentially, by being in a position, therefore you're on this committee.
Councillor McConkey?
Why would the mayor not be on the committee? I don't see. CAO is. The mayor isn't. And no, it's just that when you see something and a disaster's happened, you always see the mayor speaking on behalf. So I know he'd be closely there, but it just,
CEO Brindley, you going to explain that?
Thank you, Mayor, through to Councilor McConkey. The mayor sits as part of the Emergency Operations Center. This is the grunt work. So this is the paperwork committee, the committee that makes sure all the templates are done and that we're planning things. The mayor and deputy mayor both have a role in the EOC, so we make sure that he can do those press releases and he can do those things. But this is the worker bee committee as adverse to, sorry.
Yeah, because there are two separate things. One's the committee, and then there's actually the kind of the center. Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor French. Maybe for the benefit of council, just to give us a 30-second on the emergency sessions that we had over the last month and the pre-work we had to do, so they have an appreciation how hard we've focused on this year.
Chief Gavet?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council. So CIO Brindley was very kind and did a little bit of mentoring for me this year, as police typically look after this sort of thing on the East Coast where I came from. We engaged the services of a consultant company who basically took us back to grassroots with our training. So all members of the Emergency Operations Committee who had actually managed through an emergency and their alternates took all the basic training and linked it together using the incident management system, which is prevalent through North America. And they completed that pre-work. Then we completed an annual tabletop exercise, which went well, and we got some good feedback and participation from all members of the group and from the consultants. And they have basically set up the way forward for us and improved some of our accessibility for processes and paperwork through managing an actual emergency.
Follow-up, Deputy Mayor Allen?
Just for clarification, the tabletop exercise was an actual emergency that we had to respond to, that we spent half a day responding to, and it involved external parties phoning in and changing the circumstance. So it was an interesting exercise.
Yeah, it was actually a train derailment just past the crossing at 26 is what we dealt with. It was actually quite interesting. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we're moving on to information reports. And I need a mover and seconder to get it on the table. Coghlan, Allen. That the report, items 10.2 through to 10.4 be received as information. Do you want to pull any of these for more detailed discussion? Councillor Coghlan.
I just have a couple questions on 10.3.
Okay, please pose them.
Thank you. Mayor French, through you to Chief Gavet. The incident with the restricted burn area, and I know we've had previous conversations about restricted burn area and what that imposes on residents whose properties may come out into a residential area but are larger properties who want to have open burn. Is there a process or procedure where they can apply for an exemption from that in order to be able to have an open burn if, say, their property is 6 to 10 acres? Or how does one resident go about that?
Director Gavet.
Thank you, Your Worship. Unfortunately, I came prepared for budget and not for open air burn. From recollection, and I will come back and give you a proper answer without fudging it, but I don't believe there is currently an exemption process. However, I will check into that and report back to council, and we can certainly look at an exemption if it makes sense, if the bylaw is changed.
I'd be quite interested in that because I have 10 acres and I have to do it in a little controlled area.
Thank you, Mayor French. And then also, just on the 23rd, or sorry, the 13th again, the dreaded corn dryer, how many times a year do we actually respond to that? And is there something other than the steam not fire sign that we can, like, I don't know how to prevent this from happening, or is it much of a concern?
Director Gavay?
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Coghlan. So again, only having been here for a year, this is the only incident I'm aware of this year. However, it was a problem with the majority of the corn dryers, and a combination at night, motorists would drive past, they'd see the sort of orange sodium lamp in the yard, see what looked like smoke backlit by fire because of the orange glow. The majority of the landowners actually changed the colour of the bulbs, which helped. And in this particular instance, I am told that it would be nothing for us to be called there, 5 to 7 times an evening. And the landowner was very kind to go out and purchase the signs so that the public driving past it would be aware that it wasn't actually an emergency. So it's not a huge problem for us anymore. Speaking specifically about that incident, the landowner had forgotten where he'd placed his signs, so hadn't had them up in time for actually operating the corn dryer itself, which did result in this one call.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, verbal reports, official plan update, Director Spagnell.
Thank you, Mayor French. I really don't have anything to report about the official plan review or the update, other than we continue to do internal reviews of the draft documents, which have been released internally for review. So we're waiting on comments from those people who were circulated the report.
Okay, and economic development updates, I don't think there's anything new, but if you can think of something. Okay. All right, county updates. Well, we haven't had a meeting since Councilor McConkie.
I was excited to see that the Simcoe County Museum is going to have a skating trail, and I hadn't heard anything of that. That was a big surprise, and it's in my ward. So anyways, I just didn't know how much you guys knew and if the official opening or...
They haven't, it's interesting, they haven't, it's a very good point. They've not made it a big event. It was obviously kind of planned some time ago by the museum and that, but no, I haven't, quite honestly, we haven't been informed of any ribbon cutting or grand opening at this particular point, but we'll make sure the information gets to everyone on council, because you're right. It's obviously in our township. It's in our township and in your ward. Okay, municipal updates. Maybe I'll just, whoever has one, Councillor Austin.
Notice or just notification that the winter market that ran at the community hall is taking a bit of a break right now, but it's going to be resuming the first Friday of January and going every Friday till the end of January. Winter market at the Elmville Community Hall from 10 till 2 on Fridays.
Good. Anything else to mention? I think I'd like to just make a general comment. All the Christmas festivities now we had around the township were all well attended. There are fantastic events, and the sleigh rides and the tree lightings and the parades, and they were all great and kind of really brought a lot of our communities alive. So that was a lot of fun traveling around the township to participate in all those events. And I guess, Councillor Coghlan, sorry?
Staff appreciation, Mayor French?
I guess we can mention it. We had a great, today, we definitely had a great staff appreciation luncheon for our staff because they're the face of the township, and I think they do a good job, and I think they're quite aware of that, and we've had some very positive comments on recently on some events, and so it's our way of council showing an appreciation in our wonderful chamber here. Looked like a very sophisticated, kind of top-rated kind of banquet facility, and that was our way of showing appreciation. And we had really good attendance, and everybody was out. And maybe actually I'll flip it to CEO Brindley, because we're to increase that kind of service levels and that. We're adding a lot of training. If you want to do a mini 10-second introduction of, of how we as a township are trying to improve kind of service to our residents by ensuring that our kind of staff are trained appropriately. CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mayor French. Not something I'd be prepared for, but definitely this year, I would say in the 2017 budget, council approved some additional funds for training, which has been very helpful from both the leadership side of things as well as training the team. The other part is for 2018, we're looking at new programs with staff recognition because as we've talked with the mayor, they are our touch points. They're our ambassadors, and we're really working with the team and the interface that they have with our residents to have always a positive experience. And a lot of that take up, we've been doing a lot with the team, and it's really positive. And I look forward to 2018 and some of the stuff we're doing with our staff, and as it relates to a very positive customer service experience.
Okay, and the one thing, and Deputy Mayor Allen, just thank you, mentioned to me, we had some long-term service awards, and of course it's miniature print over here on the clerk's computer, but I definitely, it is appropriate to kind of recognize them, and let's start with the long term. I mean, there's been people here 30 years, and I jokingly said, well, they've been here longer than the corporation has existed. And that was Ron Pearson, Dale Giffen, and Dale Buchanan, 30 years. Another chap at 25 years, Gary McLaughlin, and also Jane Loftus, who works in our office here. 20 years, Bill Teeter, keeps this place looking like it does, which is really, really great. Nick Ippolito, our Chief Building Officer, 15 years. And then in the 5-year category, our CAO, Brindley, and Jamie Hamlin and Karen Jameson, who keeps us all going straight in the front office. So again, we're able to present those and our appreciation to those employees because, without a good organization, it's very difficult to do the job that we do every day. So I thank all of those. So I think that's the end of the municipal updates, unless anybody else has something else that's popped up. Okay, for the next item, sorry? Chief Givey.
Thank you, Worship. Just for the sake of speed for Councillor Coughlin's inquiry, the bylaw itself does not specify in the main legalese an exception. However, the attachment to the bylaw, which does stipulate the restricted burning areas, does have a clause at the very bottom of it in small print that says the fire chief may grant an exception. So in answer to your question, and those presumably of people affected by the restricted open air burn bylaw. Basically, if you require an exception, please make contact with my office, and either myself or the fire prevention officer will come out and take a look.
I'll send an email tomorrow. Thank you.
And while we have Chief Gavay, maybe he would like to speak to what our volunteer firefighters and how they bring Christmas to our communities. And they've done the tree. They've been selling trees vividly, and they are going to be doing the Santa ride again. So maybe just a little bit about that as well.
Director Givey.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Regarding this particular initiative, a lot of people probably don't know the fact that the township itself, and therefore the fire department, don't actually run these events. They're organised by the 3 firefighter associations within Springwater. So up in the north end we have the Elmvale Floss Firefighters Association, the Hillsdale Firefighters Association, and in the south Springwater Firefighters Association. These organisations basically run fundraisers throughout the community and throughout the year. And one of the things that they do is raise funds and awareness at Christmas time. So they have the tree sales, and all 3 associations sell trees, and the proceeds from that typically go back into the community. So they're not really making any money off of this. They're just sort of paying off the cost of the trees and then sinking the money back into their chosen charities, which is very, very commendable. With regards to the team in general, obviously I'm super proud of the work that they do, responding to emergencies and taking part in fire prevention and public relations through the year. But the thing that probably stands out the most is the fact that all of the members of all of the associations are really engaged in their community and do exceptional work, and I can't commend them enough for that.
Well said. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to motions to which notice was given, and I'm going to flip the chair over to Deputy Mayor Allen to deal with this one.
Thank you, Mayor French. Item 12.1, motion to which notice was given. It's a motion by Councillor Austin, seconded by Mayor French. And should I read the motion first? That the Township of Springwater acknowledges the announcement by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs by way of letter dated December 7, 2017, to study an area for the expansion of the Greenbelt into Simcoe County and other jurisdictions. And further, that since a significant portion of the study area may affect the long-term land use policies of the township asks that the ministry conduct consultation sessions in the township to better allow stakeholders to engage in providing that input. Before we get into discussion with this, Director Spagnell, maybe you could give us an overview, the audience an overview of the Greenbelt Study Area consultation process that was just announced recently.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Allen. So the ministry released a public notification stating that it was their intention to establish a Greenbelt study area primarily across Simcoe County and other surrounding and other regions. What has been identified is that the need for potentially growing the Greenbelt is a result of trying to protect water, and as part of those considerations, the impact that development has on water resources, being cold water, streams and rivers, moraines, and wetlands. So what the ministry is actually doing is consulting with stakeholders with respect to establish a study area for consideration, and not necessarily at this point in time a Greenbelt boundary. The study area is meant to establish an area where certain features would be studied and consulted with surrounding stakeholders. In 2018, there will be a number of consultations that the ministry will be putting on. They've referenced various areas. They've referenced the Barrie area as one key location. They have not provided any input as related to times or specific locations. That information is to be released in 2018. Staff will be reviewing the Greenbelt policies, will be taking a look at the study area, will be providing comments through the process, which will be in subsequent reports to council, and will provide council with updates with respect to when those consultations are going to occur once that information is made available.
Thank you, Director Spagnell. So you would see reports coming forward from staff pertaining to this in what time period, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Allen. What the ministry is planning is a consultation process with the public. On top of that, they're also planning to have technical meetings with planners in the area, along with other fields of expertise to gain input based on the study area and based on the specific features. As far as the written reports related to the study area, I'm not too sure about if those are going to be made as part of this, because this is the initial stage. This is establishing the study area so that the ministry can go away, prepare reports, take a look at the features that I outlined earlier, and then provide some sort of a recommendation based on what the boundary of the Greenbelt may potentially be.
So can you outline for us what your thoughts are with respect to the process leading up to council reviewing and submitting comments prior to the March 7, 2018 deadline?
As far as staff providing a report, staff is most likely going to be preparing a report as information for council's consideration to bring council up to speed as to what the potential impacts may be of the proposed study area, how much of the municipality is being impacted, and then there will most likely be a follow-up report prior to May 7th to provide comments into the process.
Prior to March 7th?
Sorry, I believe it's May 7th. Sorry, March 7th, you're correct.
Okay, Councillor Austin, this is your motion, so do you want to address this, please?
Yeah, I want to emphasize the importance of making this request to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, that one of the meetings that they have, and it doesn't appear to be that they have made any decision of where they're going to be held and when. And so I thought, getting in on, getting requests in early would let them know, first of all, that we're very serious about having an opportunity to have input here. In particular, providing all the stakeholders that will be affected by any possible policies that come out of it, to allow those stakeholders in our township to provide input. Approximately 50% of Springwater Township is part of the Nottawasaga watershed, and I know farmers in particular want to have an opportunity to have their say, and want to hear what others have to say. So I think getting in early with this request is a good thing to do. And if we get response back from the ministry saying, yes, we're going to have it here in Springwater, we can get that information out more quickly to the stakeholders so that they have an opportunity to engage in the dialogue.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Questions, comments? Councillor Hanna.
It's a good motion. I have no problem support it. I endorse it. But through to Mr. Spagnell, can you confirm for the residents at home what portion of Springwater is currently identified as being part of the Greenbelt?
Director Spagnell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Allen, through to Councillor Hanna. The specific areas are the Earl Moraine, which overlaps into the municipality, into the, I guess it would be the northeastern portion or the mid-eastern portion of the municipality, the Nottawasaga River, the Minising wetlands, and then any marine features that might be captured within those corridors. And to Councillor Austin's comment with respect to the percentage, it does appear to take up approximately 50 to 60% of the municipality as far as the study area goes.
Councillor Austin.
Point of clarification, I believe Councillor Hanna had asked what percentage of Springwater is in the green belt.
Director
And-
Spagnell.
My apologies. At this point, there is no percentage of the municipality that is currently within the Greenbelt. My apologies.
Clarification, because I believe there's none in this township none of the townships in the Greenbelt. It's not being protected is my point. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll take the vote. All in favor? Oh, Councillor Ritchie.
I have a concern about this, and I won't be supporting it because I don't believe we should be inviting them in. This is a slippery slope that we're taking, and I'm sure it's going to get passed, but, there's enough legislation in place here now, so I'm surprised and why we need more legislation on top of legislation that we've already got. So it's a slippery slope to invite them in. If they want to come in, let them come in and look around, but and leave it at that. So I want a recorded vote because I don't support this at all. Thank you.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Allen. I want to reiterate that this is an opportunity for us to dialogue, and that if the ministry sees no interest on our part in actually discussing this, then they'll think, okay, then we can just go ahead and make decisions on our own. What these kind of meetings will do is give an opportunity for anybody who does think that this is a slippery slope to voice those statements and to come up with reasons to defend their position. Otherwise, the ministry will assume, okay, we'll just go ahead and do it because nobody from Springwater said anything. This is the opportunity for us to, for our township, our municipality, and for stakeholders within the municipality to have their say. We're not supporting any policy changes at this point. We're just wanting an opportunity for dialogue.
I understand. Councillor McConkey.
Yeah, I just wanted clarification because I have concerns like Councillor Ritchie, there's too much legislation in that, but I do want people to have their say. So I know that many of the farmers won't travel if the meeting's way down in Bradford. So if you can bring the meeting closer to us, especially with the impact that it could have on us, I think we do have to make it easier for our stakeholders to have a say. And this is something that I would allow, you know, how we're cutting the mayor's budget with breakfast and stuff. Like, this would be important to have a breakfast for the stakeholders. Anyways, take care.
Can I just clarify something?
Yes, Mayor French.
The intent is not for us to be hosting this meeting. No, the province is doing these meetings. And we're concerned is, because I know floor plan review is done in Newmarket, you know, and where we have a lot of directly impacted, and we have such a huge study area. We just want them to have the meeting here. It's not our meeting. No. This is their meeting. We're just asking the province, schedule a meeting at quite honestly, the museum. It's a big enough venue, like they did in Barrie, because my concern is they just might choose a venue in Barrie, and it's a little more difficult. So that's why I support and seconded the motion.
So this is just an get more information, as Councillor Austin says, and to allow more people who have an interest in this to come out and express their views. So, Councillor Ritchie, do you still want a recorded vote on this?
Absolutely.
Okay, fine. Any other questions or comments before we record the vote? Clerk, would you please proceed? Thanks.
A recorded vote was requested by Councillor Ritchie. When I call your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Austin?
Yes.
Councillor Coghlan?
Sorry.
Yes?
Councillor Hanna?
Yes?
Councillor McConkey?
Yes?
Councillor Ritchie?
No.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Yes.
And Mayor French?
Yes.
The motion is carried.
And thank you. I'll take the chair back. And are there any notices of motion? Oh. Councillor Austin.
Yes, I'd like to make a notice of motion that the next council meeting, do I need to read it out? I have it in front of me here. Okay.
Please do.
Okay, the motion will be that, be it resolved that Springwater Township Council calls on Torstar Corporation to urgently discuss with representatives of public library systems and other interested parties ways of immediately restoring unrestricted public access to the paper's online archives.
I think we get the gist of it, and if
Right,
it needs
okay.
some tidying up and working with the library, we can definitely do that before that time. It's a notice, so we don't discuss it anyways. I think we have enough content to work on that. Okay. Items for future consideration. Is there any new ones that we want to? Councillor Hanna.
I have a problem with chemical smells. And I believe that now that we have done away with the air conditioning for the summer, the air in this room in this building is kind of stagnant. And I would just ask a future consideration. I know we have this has been established as a fragrance-free building. If we could just put clear notification at this chamber or at the door for people attending here would be aware, and they won't forget that some of us do suffer from the irritation of chemicals, and we could follow our policy. And I want to be as polite about it as can, so that's all I'll say.
Yeah. Didn't we? Actually, I'll go to the CEO Brindley. For some reason, I thought we actually had a sign somewhere. CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, at the front of the building, it talks about this building being a scent-aware building. And I can agree with Councillor Hanna that it still doesn't impact most people who still might wear perfumes. I don't necessarily, I'll leave it to council to decide. I don't necessarily consider this necessary item for future consideration because it's not really the business of council. It's a point that we can act on that level, and I'd be happy to work with our our facilities person to make better signage and do things. I just question whether or not.
I guess,
it's
maybe as
something
a
that's
follow-up
for
before I
future
go to
consideration.
Councilor McConkey, you know, like if our policy just, whatever it is, send awareness, I think, you know, a lot of places I go into now and I do a lot of volunteer, they're scent-free zones, period. And I think that's where we're actually going. Councilor McConkey?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think that there should be a motion or something that it is a scent-free, similar to what Councillor Austin did, where you don't bring in a plastic bottle to drink up here, you know, so. We did, we had a motion. Yeah, that's why, yeah, we had a motion, so I think there should be a motion that council is scent-free.
I'll go to the clerk. What is the best way of dealing with it? Is a notice of motion that we adopt a policy? Madam Clerk?
I think either way could be appropriate. It could be an item for future consideration that staff report back regarding health and safety and what the current policies are. It's a less formal way of doing it, but I don't think that would be an issue.
Yeah, so I think maybe where our direction is, you know, because I assume they would take it to the Health and Safety Committee or whatever, or request to have the township a scent-free zone. Oh,
Our joint health and safety committee did look at it a couple years ago, and that's when they opted to just go with the scent awareness zone, because we didn't have the staff resources to necessarily police a scent-free policy, but we can take it back to the joint health and safety committee again if it's.
yeah, because, I quite honestly, I'd make a personal request. I do have asthma in any sense. Talk to my wife. You know, very, very sensitive to, and if nothing else, I'd like to make this a scent-free zone, if that's what it takes. But anyway, so I think there's enough direction there, and so maybe come back with a solution. We'll turn it over to staff. I think it's the best way of doing it. Okay. Any other items for future consideration? Councilor McConkey.
I'm going to use recreation as an example, but it won't be the only example. But I would like status reports quarterly on the projects that move forward that we have just approved tonight as our capital plan. Because last year I fell short of delivering some of my projects, and I really need to understand where projects are going and what we need to do to deliver them. So I'd really like to have a quarterly update on that, and maybe as we go, you know, and I'm saying like any capital budget going forward. Okay.
And maybe some of the direction, C.O. Brindley, is, you know, the capital projects, I mean, because obviously when we approve the budget, we just say 2018. But if you could kind of just do a rough schedule, these are the predicted dates, so at least we start the year saying, okay, well, that one's not going to be done until June or July, so we're not kind of phoning every week saying, where's that at? Would that be possible to take in some of those kind of capital projects, almost do a mini Gantt chart, and then when we get to the quarterly report, we're on track or behind? Is that a reasonable request, CEO Brindley?
Mayor French, yes. I don't like Gantt charts, but we'll make something work for you. I just find them complex. But by all means, we'll be happy to do even, if not quarterly, I will also, I do a council update as well, but I'll make sure that's included as part of the council update as well that I just do with council. So regardless, quarterly for sure, and we'll keep council up to speed on all the projects.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying please make it a Gantt chart, but that idea. Any other items? Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you, I guess, to the Director of Planning, just a follow-up on the OMB process. We talked earlier about keeping council apprised as to changes, and there had been some announcements, and I just, not this evening, not right now, but as we move forward and through the new year, just to keep us updated. I don't know if to have it as part of that, just so that we are aware of the changes. And the second one, I've been speaking with some members of staff. I was at the Christmas market in Toronto last weekend, and spring water was highlighted again. This was at the Spirit of York Distillery, and they had the whole process laid out in a video of how they make their whiskey and vodka and gin, and all of a sudden we were watching the television and there was the flow at Floss 10, And then there was the big spring water sign, and it was highlighting spring water and what it is. So my key questions is how are they getting the water? Where are they getting the water from? And I know there are other companies that are doing this, so I just would like some more information about it and how, if this is something we want to promote within the township, or if this is, I know gravel, we get a tariff on it. I didn't know if that was a possibility as well. So just some more information on it.
CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mayor French, through to Councillor Coghlan. I mean, it's nice that they have it there, but they don't access their water from that facility. So it'd be interesting, we'll look into it, but I was saying that facility actually isn't designed to bring a commercial flow off of it. So I'd like to look into it because I'm not sure why they have that picture there. Yeah, or.
Thank you, and through Mayor French, I understand that you can't bring a truck in there, so if they're highlighting that and showing spring water, that's my question, where are they getting the water from? Because I know that in Clearview, there is a facility available to specifically Creemore Springs that they pull up and they get the truck. I don't know if they pay for it or not, but if these companies are starting to do this and it's going to keep happening, what does that look like for spring water?
Thank you. Okay, so CEO Brindley, we'll look into that. Something I just thought of, I wouldn't mind adding to items for future consideration, and I guess we'd charge Nicole with this, is, you know, and they do it at the NVCA when we have our monthly meetings. Basically, they really have a brief communication report, you know, what newspapers, articles, or whatever the to do with kind of the township. And since we don't have a lot of media left anymore, it may be fairly easy to kind of track it. But it may be interesting, communication reports, if there's something written up in the newspaper about anything. And that's what they do, the MVCA, any mention of the MVCA, good, bad, or indifferent, it is noted in there. And again, if it's too cumbersome, fine, but just I'd ask you to maybe look into it. Sorry. Not sure. Councillor McConkey, do you have a question or comment?
If we do spring water, and we've just got the spring water news, we're going to get all of our council reports.
I'm talking about news, not our columns or whatever, but news. CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mayor French. What we'll do is, first of all, look at, obviously through social media and other tactics, there is a way to track. And what we'll do is maybe talk about, let's see what we can do first, and also then see what the best format is in terms of delivering that news to council.
No, and the only reason I mention it, because I do think that there's a lot of communication we do as the kind of spring water, that, some of the work behind the scenes that Nicole does, and, maybe we should recognize it. Oh, okay, well, we had 25 press releases or whatever the case may be on various things. Okay, anything else? Okay, let's move on to bylaws. And can I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws? Coghlan and McConkey. That the bylaws listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. Confirmation bylaw, a mover and a seconder. Alan, Austin. That bylaw 2017-102 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on December 20, 2017, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And an adjournment bylaw. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Austin and Coghlan. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 8:13 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on January 17, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. Council Chambers Administrative Center in Minising. All those in favor? Carried. And on behalf of the council and everyone here, wish everyone a Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and a prosperous 2018. And if you're still watching us, thank you for joining us. And for anybody that's in the gallery, we do have some treats that are quickly coming out. So please, help yourself to the treats that we're presenting. And and enjoy yourself and enjoy the holiday season.